I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who needed more. I wore my wedding ring like armor, smiled when I was supposed to, and folded laundry like it was some sacred ritual of love. But the truth? I was suffocating in predictability, starving, in a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. And then, he touched me. Not even intimately, just the brush of his hand against mine while passing a wine glass. And I swear, my knees nearly buckled. It wasn't just the size of him, though that would leave me breathless later. It was the way his eyes saw right through me, to the woman I'd buried beneath motherhood, meal planning, and polite sex once a week. That night, I lay in bed, beside my husband, still trembling from a conversation that had lasted only minutes, but rewrote everything I thought I knew about myself. My name is Claire. I'm 32, married for 8 years to a man who, by every external measure, is good. Ethan is kind, dependable. He brings me coffee in bed on Sundays, rubs my feet when I complain about work, and never raises his voice, even when I'm moody or cold. We met in college. I was drawn to his steadiness, his calm way of loving. Back then, I thought safety was the most important thing a man could offer. I mistook predictability for passion. We bought a house in the suburbs 3 years ago. One of those neighborhoods where everyone smiles, grills on weekends, and waves politely while hiding their cracks behind white fences. I play the role. I bake cookies for the school fundraisers, remember birthdays, plan vacations that look great on Instagram. From the outside, it's a sweet, enviable life. But inside me, something has been quietly unraveling. It's hard to explain when your partner hasn't done anything wrong. Ethan loves me in his way. Soft kisses on the forehead, goodnight routines, text check-ins. But somewhere between the grocery lists and laundry piles, I stopped feeling seen. Our sex life faded into a pattern. Saturday nights, lights off, quick and quiet. I used to initiate, hoping something would spark, but it only made the emptiness louder when it didn't. After a while, I stopped trying. He didn't notice. I started to notice things, though. Small things. The way I'd ache at a love scene in a movie, or how I'd feel a flutter when someone brushed past me too closely at work. I told myself it was normal. I told myself I was tired, hormonal, that maybe this was just what long-term love became. But deep down, I knew I was starving. Not just for sex, but for something alive, something unscripted, something that made me feel like more than a wife, more than a caretaker, like a woman who could still be wanted, devoured. I missed being looked at like I was dangerous. I missed being touched like I was treasure. And the scariest part? I started to wonder if I even remembered how that felt, or if the version of me who once thrived on desire had quietly died somewhere in the years between our wedding cake and our shared Google Calendar. It started innocently. Don't they always? His name was Marcus. He was a new hire at Ethan's company, a senior consultant brought in for a short-term project. Tall, confident, effortlessly charismatic. The kind of man who filled a room without trying, who made eye contact a little too long, whose laugh lingered in your body like a low hum. Ethan invited him over for dinner one Friday night. I remember the way Marcus smiled when he shook my hand. Firm grip, warm palms. And then, those eyes, deep brown, focused, unflinching. He looked at me like he was trying to memorize something. No, like he already knew something. "I've heard a lot about you," he said with a grin. I forced a polite smile, said something practiced, but my skin burned where he'd touched it, and for the rest of the night, I was too aware of him. The way he sat, legs slightly spread, commanding space without arrogance. The way he watched me when he thought I wasn't looking. How he asked questions, and not just the usual, "What do you do?" but deeper ones, like, "What's something you used to love that you've forgotten about?" That one hit like a slap. Blinked, caught off guard, then mumbled something about writing. How I used to write poetry in college. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low. "I'd love to read something you've written." No man had asked about my passions in years. Ethan loved me, yes, but his love was comfortable, careful. Marcus's attention was curious. It lit something, In me, I hadn't felt in so long, like an old engine sputtering back to life. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other more. Ethan began bringing Marcus along to our weekend barbecues and dinners. I hated how much I looked forward to them. I started wearing lipstick again, dresses that clung a little tighter. Ethan didn't notice, but Marcus did. I saw it in the way his eyes lingered a fraction too long on my collarbone, or how his jaw would tense when I bent over to pour wine. One night, Ethan stepped out to take a call while Marcus and I cleared the dishes. Our hands brushed at the sink, a stupid, mundane moment, but the charge that passed between us made me gasp softly. He froze. I looked up, and for the first time, neither of us looked away. "I'm sorry," he murmured, but there was nothing apologetic in his eyes. Just hunger. Contained, controlled, dangerous. I laughed nervously and mumbled something about the soap. My hands were shaking. After that night, something shifted. We didn't talk about it, but we both knew. Every interaction became laced with tension, like walking across a frozen lake, feeling the cracks beneath your feet. He'd find ways to stand too close. I'd find excuses to linger in the kitchen when he came over. Once, while Ethan was in the other room, Marcus reached past me for a bottle of wine and his hand grazed my lower back. Bare skin. His touch was searing. I stopped breathing. "Sorry," he whispered again, voice ragged. "I forget myself around you." My pulse thudded in my throat. "Don't." It wasn't just physical. He started texting me, casually. At first, asking for a recipe I'd mentioned, sending a photo of a book he thought I'd like. But then it deepened. He'd send a song at midnight with a message. "This made me think of you." I'd lie in bed beside Ethan, phone glowing in my hand, heartbeat wild. We talked about things I hadn't said out loud in years. Dreams, regrets, what it felt like to wake up and not recognize your own life. He saw me. Not the version I projected, but the woman buried underneath. One afternoon, I met him at a coffee shop downtown, under the guise of returning a book he'd lent me. It was broad daylight, crowded, safe. But the moment our knees touched under the table, I forgot how to breathe. He looked at me like he wanted to ruin me. "Claire," he said, my name a plea and a promise. "I'm trying to be good." "So, am I?" I whispered. We sat there in silence, drinking coffee neither of us tasted, surrounded by people who had no idea the war raging between our bodies. When I stood to leave, he stood too. Too close, too tall, too warm. And in a voice, barely above a breath, he said, "If I ever cross a line, it won't be by accident." I nodded. I should have said no. I should have walked away, blocked his number, buried the fantasy. But instead, I went home, lay beside my husband, and imagined what Marcus's hands would feel like tangled in my hair. I closed my eyes and pictured his mouth on mine. I came from just the thought of him, and that was the moment I knew it was only a matter of time. It happened on a Wednesday. Ethan had left early for a business trip, 3 days in Chicago for some leadership conference. We kissed goodbye at the door. I watched him drive off, coffee thermos in hand, always so responsible, so good. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, I felt the silence settle over the house like a storm cloud. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, heart racing, hands trembling, staring at the clock. I told myself I wasn't going to call him, but I did. Marcus answered on the first ring. His voice was lower than usual, tighter, like he already knew. "He's gone?" he asked. "Yes." A pause. Then, "I'm coming." I spent the next hour pacing the house, straightening pillows, changing clothes 3 times. I didn't know who I wanted to be for him, soft and welcoming or wild and reckless. I landed somewhere in between, in a silk robe I hadn't worn in years and nothing underneath. When I opened the door, he stood there in jeans and a black shirt, rain clinging to his shoulders from a sudden afternoon shower. His eyes dragged over me slowly, Not hungry, but reverent, like he couldn't believe I was real. Claire, he breathed. One word, my name, and my body lit up like fire. We didn't speak. He stepped inside, shut the door behind him, and then his hands were on me. Gently at first, fingers brushing my jaw, cupping my face as if afraid I'd disappear. I leaned into him, exhaling a breath I hadn't known I was holding. And then he kissed me. God, he kissed me. Not the way Ethan kissed. Quick, familiar, dutiful. No. Marcus kissed like it was a confession, a collision, a hunger barely restrained. His mouth claimed mine. Soft, and then suddenly not. His hands slid into my hair, tugging just enough to make my knees wobble. I moaned, not because I wanted to seduce him, but because my body was starved. He backed me against the hallway wall, his mouth trailing to my neck, my collarbone. I could feel the hard line of him pressed against my thigh, and it made me dizzy. His hands roamed my body like he already knew the map of it, like he'd been dreaming of this for years. You're shaking, he whispered, brushing my cheek. I'm terrified, I admitted. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. We can stop. Say the word. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I guided his hand under the hem of my robe, onto my bare thigh. His breath hitched. Jesus, Claire. He lifted me like I weighed nothing, carried me into the living room, and laid me down on the couch like I was something sacred. The contrast between the softness of the throw pillows and the roughness of his stubble against my skin made me shiver. His mouth found my breast, and I arched into him, desperate. He was taking his time, savoring, worshipping. My robe slipped, open completely, and his eyes darkened as he took me in. You're so damn beautiful, he whispered, voice rough. Do you know how long I've wanted this? No, I whispered back. Tell me. He did, not with words, but with every kiss, every stroke, every way he made me feel like the center of his world. When he finally entered me, I cried, out, not from pain, from the sheer overwhelm of it. The size of him, yes, but more than that. The weight of the moment, the emotional force behind it. I had never been filled like this, not just physically, but completely. My fingers dug into his back. I wrapped my legs around him. We moved together like we'd been made for this, his rhythm deep and slow at first, then building. I whispered, his name like a prayer. He kissed my eyelids, my jaw, the hollow of my throat. His hand slipped between us, finding me with perfect precision. I shattered. It wasn't just an orgasm. It was a breaking. Years of numbness, of polite sex and repressed longing, it all unraveled in that moment. I sobbed, not from sadness, but from relief. From the raw truth of being seen, desired, undone. He held me through it, never stopping, never rushing. He whispered things I barely understood through the fog of sensation. You're mine. You're incredible. I've never wanted anyone like this. And when he came, it was with a groan that vibrated against my chest, his whole body trembling with the force of it. We collapsed into each other, slick with sweat, hearts thudding in sync. For a while there was only silence, heavy, electric. I buried my face in his neck. He stroked my back slowly, reverently. I don't know what this means, I said, my voice cracking. Me neither, he admitted. I pulled away just enough to look at him. His eyes weren't triumphant. They were soft, almost broken. Are you okay? He asked. I nodded, but I wasn't sure. Physically, I was still humming. My body felt like it had been reborn. I had never felt more desired, more woman. Every nerve was lit up. But emotionally, I was spinning. I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. I'd let another man inside me, in every way that mattered. I should have felt guilt. And maybe I would. But in that moment, all I felt was alive. I don't want to hurt him, I whispered, thinking of Ethan, his sweet, predictable love, his hands that never trembled, his eyes that never really searched me. Marcus nodded. I know. I sat up slowly, pulling the robe around me. He watched me with a mix of awe and sorrow. This wasn't just sex, I said, more to myself than to him. No, he said. It wasn't. And that terrified me more than anything else, because I hadn't just cheated. I'd woken up. The next morning, I woke up alone. Marcus had left sometime during the night. He didn't say goodbye, and I didn't expect him to. It wasn't cold or cruel. It was respectful, I think. He knew I needed space to process what we'd done. Or maybe he needed it more than I did. I lay there on the couch, wrapped in a throw blanket, my body sore in places I hadn't felt in years. I touched my lips, still swollen from his kiss, and stared at the ceiling. Sunlight filtered through, the blinds, soft and golden, indifferent to the mess I'd made of my life. I should have felt shame, but I didn't. I felt hollow. Like something had been carved out of me. Not broken, not yet, but emptied, rearranged. I wasn't the same woman who had made coffee for her husband the day before. That woman believed she could live quietly with a smile on her face and silence in her soul. This woman? She couldn't lie to herself anymore. I spent the rest of the day floating through the house like a ghost. I showered twice, but his scent still clung to my skin, buried somewhere beneath my ribs. I washed the sheets even though we hadn't. Used the bed. I vacuumed. I organized the spice rack. Anything to not think. Anything to avoid the image of Marcus above me, inside me, saying my name like it meant something. When Ethan called that evening to check in, I answered like nothing had happened. Hey babe, he said. How's everything at home? Fine, I replied. My voice sounded thin, distant. I miss you, he said. Can't wait to be back in your arms. I smiled, a practice thing, and whispered, me too. But all I could think about was how different his arms felt. Safe, yes, familiar, but not electric, not urgent. I closed my eyes and pictured his hands on me, the way they moved during our usual intimacy. Soft, predictable, almost apologetic. I remembered the last time we made love, and how I'd stared at the ceiling the whole time, counting the seconds until it ended. How I'd faked a moan just to make him feel good. Then I remembered Marcus, the way he growled my name, the way his mouth worshipped every inch of me, how my body had begged for more even after I'd collapsed. The way I'd cried, sobbed, because it felt like being found after years of being lost. And still, I didn't regret it. That was the part that scared me the most. Ethan came home 2 days later. He brought me a souvenir mug from the hotel gift shop and kissed me like he always did, quick, sweet, shallow. I smiled, said thank you, told him the mug was cute. That night, we made love. I let him touch me. I even closed my eyes and tried to be present. But it was like trying to recite poetry in a language I no longer spoke. His hands moved with care, but not with fire. His body fit mine, but didn't ignite me. I faked it again. I told myself I was cruel. I told myself I was broken. But I knew the truth. I wasn't cruel. And I wasn't broken. I was awake. Afterwards, I lay beside him in the dark, listening to his breathing slow into sleep. I stared at the ceiling again. Same ceiling. Different. Woman. The guilt was there, simmering beneath the surface. Not because I didn't love him in some way. I did. I always would. But because I knew he deserved someone who didn't close her eyes and think of someone else. And I deserved more than the life I had convinced myself was enough. I kept waiting for the guilt to crush me, for the shame to rise like a tide and drown me. But it never came that way. It didn't roar, it whispered. It whispered in the quiet moments. When I saw Ethan laugh at the TV, when he offered to pick up dinner, when he reached for my hand in the car. It whispered, "He's a good man, and you betrayed him." But alongside it, another voice whispered too. "You were dying inside, and you let yourself live." I didn't know what to do with that duality, the contradiction of it, the ache of wanting both safety and fire, both peace and passion. So I smiled. I kissed my husband goodnight, and I laid in bed with two truths fighting in my chest. I loved him, and I didn't want him. It's been 3 weeks. 3 weeks since Marcus touched me. Since I touched something inside myself I didn't know existed. Since my body came alive in a way that both exhilarated and haunted me. I haven't seen him since that night. He hasn't called, and I haven't reached out. I think he knows, maybe better than I do, that if we spoke again, even once, I'd fall into him all over again. I don't know if that silence is kindness or punishment. Maybe it's both. Ethan, meanwhile, is still Ethan. He folds our laundry. He kisses my forehead before bed. He brings home fresh strawberries because he knows I love them. He tries, and I hate that I keep measuring his love in teaspoons after Marcus poured himself into me like a storm. But something has shifted. It's not just the sex, though that difference feels like a canyon now. It's in my own reflection. In the way I look at my life, my choices, in how I carry my body. Like I know what I'm capable of now. Not just of betrayal, but of feeling, of wanting, of saying yes to something that wasn't safe, but true. I've been waiting for the guilt to rot me from the inside, and yes, it gnaws. I see it in the way Ethan trusts me, the way he laughs so freely, and I flinch. But I also see the woman I was, polite, numb, shrinking, and I wonder how long I could have kept pretending. Tonight, I sat across from him at dinner and I watched him talk about work, and all I could think was, he deserves someone who isn't somewhere else entirely. I don't know if that woman is still me. After dinner, I told him I needed air. I walked for 2 hours with no destination. Just me, streetlights, and the echo of choices I can't undo. I came home to find him asleep on the couch, a blanket half draped across him, the TV still murmuring in the background. I stood there a long time, watching him breathe, wondering if I could ever climb back into that life, or if I even wanted to. And now I'm in bed, writing this. Heart thudding, no decisions made, just a quiet truth pressing against the walls of my chest. I want more. More than duty, more than comfort, more than being the lucky one in a marriage that checks every box except the one that says alive. I don't know what comes next. I might stay, I might leave, I might call Marcus, I might not. But I can't go back to sleepwalking through my life. Not now. Not after being touched like that. Not after realizing I was never just someone's wife. I was a woman waiting to be awakened.